Today I'm going to tell you about one of the greatest heists in the history of Europe, and possibly in all of modern history. The strange part? The thief is almost certainly known. They're just too powerful to confront, and even the intelligence agencies of Europe's largest nations are afraid to address it publicly. It started like this: Stockholm, Sweden, the year 2010. People across the city are suddenly panicking. A large number of cars have spontaneously caught fire across multiple streets, and nobody knows why. Police units and fire trucks race to respond, still with no explanation for how all these vehicles ignited simultaneously. Meanwhile, a few kilometers outside the capital, on the outskirts of the city, a team of masked operatives has just breached the private estate of the Swedish royal family. Their target? The Royal Wing, located in the southern section of the estate, which housed a large number of priceless historical and artistic works. The moment they got inside, they went to work. They bypassed the security measures, took exactly what they came for, and left. The alarms triggered. Police were notified immediately, but the thieves were completely calm because they knew that Swedish law enforcement was fully occupied with the car fire crisis, which they themselves had staged as a deliberate distraction. By the time police reached the Royal Wing, there was no one left to find. The thieves had already taken what they wanted and were gone. Police had walked directly into the trap. When officers finally reached the Royal Wing, the room was empty. The operatives had taken everything on their list and vanished. The entire operation took exactly 6 minutes, from entry to exit. 6 minutes. What was stolen? Sculptures, cups, plates, a ceremonial teapot. But every single item was priceless. So significant, in fact, that Swedish authorities classified the loss not only as a massive economic blow, but as a profound cultural catastrophe. Police later established that the thieves had fled on bicycles, reaching a nearby lake where a fast white speedboat was waiting, and disappeared onto the water. Security agencies remained calm because they believed the stolen items were so recognizable they could never be sold without being instantly flagged. They said, "We'll catch them easily enough." But they had no idea they weren't dealing with ordinary thieves, and that this robbery was only the beginning. Everyone, make yourself comfortable, because if you're new here, I'm Amin the narrator, and I cover everything strange and mysterious on this planet. Today's story isn't just about the value of what was stolen or how it was taken. Today's story is about who the thief is and why no one can touch them. 5 months after Sweden, in Bergen, Norway, masked men rappelled down from a glass ceiling inside the Code Museum and made off with imperial vases and dynastic seals. In 2012, thieves in Durham, England, broke into Durham University Museum and stole sculptures and priceless ceramic porcelain. That same month, the University of Cambridge Museum was also hit. The pattern kept repeating, all the way through 2015, when the wave reached Paris itself. Thieves breached the Château de Fontainebleau, the former residence of the kings of France, a palace containing over 1,500 rooms packed with treasures. The thieves went in and took only specific, extremely rare items. Now, since all of these incidents took place across Europe, you're probably wondering, what does China have to do with any of this? And why does the title of this video mention China? Be patient, because what's coming will genuinely stagger you. It turned out, every single robbery across all of Europe was executed in the exact same way. Cars set on fire as a decoy, followed by a precision theft, clean, professional, flawlessly timed. Escape routes identical across every operation. But the most critical detail, more important than the method, was that every single artifact, sculpture, and relic stolen across all these countries was the same type of object. The first target in Sweden, the Chinese Royal Wing. The 56 pieces taken from the Code Museum in Norway, all from the Chinese collection. The thieves who broke into Durham University targeted the Oriental Museum, Chinese antiquities exclusively. And the Fontainebleau heist in France? They walked past thousands of irreplaceable European masterpieces and went directly to a section called the Chinese Museum and stripped it clean. Every single robbery had one consistent target: Chinese art, Chinese sculpture, Chinese imperial artifacts, and nothing else. As if they were operating from a precise shopping list, one they had studied deeply and in detail. They knew exactly what they wanted. They knew exactly where each piece was. They walked past items of enormous value that they easily could have taken and left them behind because they weren't on the list. As I told you, in the French palace, they had access to thousands of artifacts from across human history, and they walked past all of it. They only took what was Chinese. At this point, Interpol stepped in. It was clear these were international crimes. But despite all the investigations, all the coordinated resources, they couldn't even slow the wave down. The robberies continued. Now, let's get into the core of this. The intelligence agencies of the affected nations were absolutely certain of one thing. These were not ordinary thieves. They were executing clear, specific instructions from a strategic mind operating entirely outside of Europe. But who? Who is this orchestrating force, and why are they stealing artifacts that could never legally be sold or publicly displayed? And that's exactly what happened, because the overwhelming majority of items stolen were never seen anywhere again. Which strongly suggests they went directly into a private collection, belonging to a single individual or a secretive organization, hidden away in a location known only to them. As time passed, the trail went cold. Intelligence agencies were paralyzed because what their investigations slowly and carefully revealed were signs pointing toward the involvement of some of the most powerful elites on the planet. And to understand the full picture, to truly understand why they almost certainly know who the thief is, and yet can do absolutely nothing, we need to go back about 160 years to the end of the Second Opium War, specifically in Beijing. British and French soldiers marched into the Chinese capital and forced their way into a place called the Old Summer Palace, Yuanmingyuan, the imperial residence of the Qing dynasty. The soldiers entered, ostensibly seeking revenge for captured comrades who had been tortured and killed inside. Once inside, they showed no restraint. They destroyed it. The Old Summer Palace, one of the greatest architectural wonders in human history, was razed completely. And before they burned it, they looted it on a catastrophic scale. Chinese art, sculptures, historical objects, vases, jewels, ceremonial cups, plates, and even rare dog breeds that existed nowhere else on Earth at the time except China. After stripping everything from the palace, they set it on fire. Most of the stolen objects eventually made their way across Europe, becoming part of private collections, royal households, and national museums. Queen Victoria of Britain received the very first Pekingese dog ever seen on European soil as a gift, taken directly from the palace. And gradually, these Chinese artifacts and sculptures found their way into European museums across the continent, including the Chinese Royal Wing in Sweden, the Code Museum in Norway, and the Chinese Museum at Fontainebleau in Paris. China has suffered more than any other country on Earth from the theft of its cultural heritage. But in recent years, something changed. A wave of national determination and government-backed pressure began to build. China officially committed to recovering everything looted during the Opium Wars, particularly from the Old Summer Palace. But how exactly? Well, let's say that certain circles within China made a decision. They would pursue the return of these stolen relics by any means necessary, piece by piece, regardless of method, regardless of cost. But realistically, who has the power, the resources, and the organizational loyalty to carry out a mission of that scale? I'll tell you what I've read, and you can draw your own conclusion. In 2016, China made global headlines when it announced a major government initiative to support tech entrepreneurs, promising to produce more billionaires than America. The result was immediate and staggering. Statistically, China was producing a new billionaire every 2 days. And naturally, this new elite class, suddenly flush with extraordinary wealth, began spending it on rare cultural artifacts at prices that defied all logic. This wasn't just a wealth flex, it became a movement, a way of displaying both immense fortune and deep patriotism simultaneously. When you spend your billions on the recovery of your nation's heritage, you aren't just showing off wealth, you are demonstrating love for your country. You're reclaiming history. And so, the wealthy began buying back stolen Chinese art from wherever it appeared at auction to bring it home. At an auction house in the London suburbs, a Chinese imperial vase from the old summer palace went on sale. Bidding opened at an already jaw-dropping $800,000, and within just 30 minutes of bidding, it sold for $69.5 million. That was 50 times its estimated value. And of course, the buyer was an anonymous individual from China. That wasn't an isolated case. A small porcelain bowl sold for $36 million. A small silk carpet, $45 million. But purchasing items that appear at auction only goes so far, because the majority of these artifacts never surface at public auction at all. They sit permanently inside museum collections or in private hands, locked away from any public sale. So what do you do when every legal avenue has been exhausted? When diplomacy fails, when the auction houses don't have what you need, this is where, according to investigative reports, the situation shifts. There are credible reports indicating that individuals with extraordinary wealth inside China began funding specialized professional thieves to recover these stolen items. And once recovered, the artifacts were not being displayed publicly, but were being hidden in purpose-built private storage facilities far from any public eye. And even if they were displayed inside China, it wouldn't create legal problems for the owners there, because Chinese property law and intellectual ownership rights operate very differently from the rest of the world. Even selling them on Chinese soil wouldn't expose anyone to prosecution. And if you think about it from a different angle, these objects were stolen from China in the first place, so returning them isn't really a crime at all. It could even be seen as liberation. The state might even reward you for recovering what rightfully belongs to the Chinese people. Now, while that analysis is logical and probably accurate, the Chinese billionaires aren't the only suspects here. In recent years, there has been growing, serious speculation that a force far greater than any private billionaire is behind these thefts. Specifically, the Chinese government itself. That the state is the one commissioning the theft of these artifacts from European museums and is the real buyer. And ultimately, after all this speculation, the Chinese Communist Party actually said it publicly in front of the entire world, "We want our relics returned." And it was abundantly clear that the method of return was the last thing they cared about. They showed zero sympathy, zero acknowledgement of the museum robberies happening across Europe. And to give you the sharpest possible evidence, one of the items stolen from the Kode Museum in Norway is currently on display, openly, in an international airport in Shanghai. Norwegian police attempted to pursue the matter, but authorities at a higher level of the Norwegian government reportedly had no interest in humiliating China with formal accusations or creating an international incident, so they shut the investigation down. Now, if the Chinese government is involved in this operation, their mechanism for doing so would most likely be the China Poly Group, the conglomerate run directly by the Chinese government, which began as a division of the People's Liberation Army, but has since expanded dramatically, becoming responsible for missile systems, national security weapons, and also extending into global trade, real estate, and the buying and selling of art and antiquities. They run the world's third largest public auction house, based in China. And the description given by those familiar with their operation is striking. On the 3rd floor of the Poly Group complex, you can buy a painting. On the 27th floor, you can buy a missile system. The Poly Group today declares assets of $140 billion. That is a terrifying number. For those unfamiliar with the scale, it is double the entire GDP of a nation like Luxembourg. So, is the Poly Group responsible for the European museum heists? I genuinely don't know. What I do know is that they operate a global intelligence network to locate missing Chinese relics and recover them. And as they themselves put it, not me, these are Chinese artifacts that were taken illegally by European powers. The Poly Group has never disclosed much about their relic recovery program, and when repeatedly asked to clarify their methodology and approach, they have never provided a straight answer. However, they have publicly denied any involvement in the European museum robberies and stated that any accusation against them is entirely baseless. They also argued there is no concrete evidence that any large organized power is behind these thefts, and they countered by pointing out that not everything stolen from the Paris heist was Chinese. They said there was a Thai artifact among the items taken. So why isn't Thailand being accused? And why would China steal something that has nothing to do with China? In the end, these robberies remain deeply mysterious. In front of the entire world, no one has been formally charged. My question for you is this: how is it possible that operations of this scale can be carried out in some of the most technologically advanced, most heavily secured countries in the world, and no one can identify who did it? Or do you think they already know, but simply aren't willing to say? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. I'm Amin the narrator. I cover everything strange and mysterious on this planet. If you love a good mystery, check out the story about the woman whose husband died under suspicious circumstances and what investigators uncovered long after his death. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.